Welcome back to DFC Books. We're diving into a literary classic today that reminds us that brilliance often blooms where it is least expected.
And that the greatest secrets in the world are often found between the covers of a book.
Exactly. Now, if you have a request for a book you'd like us to deep dive into next, please let us know in the comments below. We are always ready to start the next great analytical journey.
Absolutely. Our source material today is focused on the very beginning of Roald Dahl's amazing Matilda, of course with those iconic illustrations by Quentin Blake.
Can't imagine it without them.
No way. And this deep dive is really tailor-made for you, the learner who loves quick knowledge delivered thoroughly. We're seeking those aha moments that reveal the underlying narrative structure.
And the literary choices that set the entire story in motion.
That's it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Dahl, he doesn't just introduce a protagonist. He immediately establishes this powerful, almost, I'd say, hyperbolic juxtaposition.
Oh, it's completely hyperbolic.
You have this child of extraordinary, almost unbelievable gifts. Matilda trapped in an unbelievably ordinary and frankly antagonistic family environment.
Fundamentally antagonistic, yes.
So our mission today is pretty critical. We need to trace Matilda's early sort of self-propelled genius.
Right, and analyze the key interactions that really forged her intellect.
And then dissect those first pivotal acts of, well, tactical rebellion that defined her story. It's all about showing precisely how intellectual power became her first and greatest weapon against parental tyranny.
And to really understand this particular Dahl story, we have to talk about the author's tone right away. He doesn't rely on subtle drama, does he?
Not at all.
He uses what you could call grotesque hyperbole. I mean, every flaw in the Wormwood parents, their vulgarity, their ignorance, their neglect, it's all amplified to an absurd degree.
And that stylistic choice is so important because it ensures that you, the reader, you don't feel pity for Matilda so much as you feel an immediate, visceral alliance with her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's crucial to rooting for her later acts of revenge. You're on her side from the first page.
Okay, so let's get into it. The narrative begins by immediately throwing us into that central conflict. It details the spectacular failure of Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood to recognize, let alone nurture, their daughter's exceptional nature. This isn't a story of just, benign neglect.
No, not at all. It's active, profound antagonism built right into the structure of the family unit.
So let's start with Matilda Wormwood herself. The text frames her as a phenomenon, really.
It does. She's described as sensitive and brilliant, an extraordinary child whose ability should have been glaringly obvious even to, and this is a quote, the most half-witted of parents.
But the Wormwoods exist on a plane of willful ignorance that seems to defy even that concept of half-witted. They're in a league of their own.
They really are.
Let's delve into those early milestones because they're so crucial to understanding her character. Her development is detailed almost scientifically, proving her genius is innate. It's self-propelled.
The sheer velocity of her learning curve is what's fascinating here. Her mind is described as nimble, which is just the perfect descriptor for her processing speed.
Right, it really is.
We learn that by the ridiculously early age of 1.5, her speech was essentially perfect.
1.5.
Yeah, possessing a vocabulary comparable to most grown-ups. For any other parents, I mean, this would be a source of enormous pride and attention.
But instead, we get the classic Wormwood response. It's almost like it's designed to immediately crush any sign of intellectual life.
It is. They didn't applaud her. They called her a noisy chatterbox and insisted small girls should be seen and not heard.
Just think about the psychological impact of that for a second. A child whose brain is literally exploding with linguistic ability is immediately taught that her greatest strength is a nuisance.
All that frustration has to find an outlet. It has to go somewhere.
And that outlet, predictably, became self-education.
Right. The source material is so deliberate in showing her growth continued despite her environment, not because of it. By age 3, she taught herself to read.
And how? This is the amazing part.
By using the only printed matter available, low-quality newspapers and magazines scattered around the house.
It just highlights her intense internal drive. She didn't need a teacher. She just needed words. Any words.
And by age 4, she could read fast and well.
This early self-sufficiency is. It's the foundational aha moment of book, isn't it? It immediately establishes that Matilda's development is powered entirely by her own internal engine.
Completely divorced from parental guidance. She is an entirely self-made intellect.
Which brings us to the parents who are structurally the perfect literary foils for Matilda.
Oh, absolutely. The source material labels them as taking the opposite line of parenting, even going so far as to categorize them as far worse than the doting ones.
And why is that crucial?
Because doting parents might smother a child, but at least they care. The Wormwoods simply do not. They provide this blank canvas of pure antagonism.
And Dahl uses that magnificent hyperbole you mentioned to define their contempt for her. They don't just ignore her. They view Matilda as nothing more than a scab.
Can we just pause on that image for a moment? A scab.
It's so visceral. A scab is temporary, it's unsightly, and it's something you instinctively want to remove.
Yes, and the text is explicit about it. A scab, as they see her, is something you have to put up with until the time comes when you could pick it off and flick it away.
It's horrifying.
Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood look forward enormously to the time when they could pick their little daughter off and flick her away, preferably, into the next county or even further than that.
That analogy is such a profound psychological weapon used by Dahl. It forces the reader to feel immediate, justified emotional revulsion toward the adult.
You're right there with Matilda from that moment.
That imagery, seeing your own child as this irritating biological annoyance you can't wait to shed, it makes Matilda's eventual acts of resistance not just justified, but morally required.
It does. The text summarizes the parents perfectly as gormless and so wrapped up in their own silly little lives that they fail to notice anything unusual about their daughter.
Their self-absorption is the direct source of their wickedness.
And notice the structural choice regarding her brother, Michael. He's briefly mentioned as a perfectly normal boy.
Right, he's the control group.
Exactly. Michael functions as a narrative benchmark. He confirms that the Wormwoods can produce a normal child, but Matilda's exception is so spectacular that only the parents' extraordinary blindness could miss it.
So the stage is set for this quiet but fierce intellectual war.
Waged by a 4-year-old armed only with her brain against two extremely self-absorbed, ignorant adults.
It's the classic literary theme, isn't it? The inherent worth of intelligence against the brute force of ignorance.
And in the Wormwood household, ignorance is winning the first few rounds.
Okay, so let's shift our focus now from that suffocating home environment. We arrive at the next crucial segment of Matilda's early development.
This is where things really start to change.
With absolute zero intellectual support at home, Matilda's natural thirst for knowledge turns her toward the only accessible source of solace and growth.
The printed word. This section covers the critical event of her pilgrimage to the library and finding her first vital ally.
And the start of her reading journey immediately highlights the extreme intellectual poverty of the Wormwood home. I mean, it's a desert.
It really is. The narrative states that the only book in the entire enlightened household was her mother's easy cooking.
Which, the fact that Matilda, at age 4, read this cookbook cover to cover and learned all the recipes by heart just to appease her desperate need for vocabulary and structure.
It shows incredible commitment, doesn't it? She wasn't interested in making a souffle. She was interested in consuming words.
Any words she could find. And this consumption led to a simple, hopeful request to her father.
"Daddy," she said, "do you think you could buy me a book?"
And his response is immediate and philosophically dismissive. It just reveals his deep-seated anti-intellectualism. He doesn't say he can't afford it.
No, he objects to the idea of it.
He shouts, "What's wrong with the telly, for heaven's sake? We've got a lovely telly with a 12-inch screen, and now you come asking for a book. You're getting spoiled, my girl."
That is such a profound moment. He views reading not as education or growth, but as an expensive, indulgent luxury.
A vice. A vice that must be disciplined out of her.
And the television, the ultimate passive medium, is the highest cultural authority in the Wormwood home.
So Matilda initiates her own path to self-agency. We learn that her routine was basically built on parental neglect.
Every single weekday afternoon, she was left completely alone.
Michael was at school, her father was running his fraudulent car business.
And her mother was playing bingo, 8 miles away. That 8-mile gap is so important. It provided Matilda with her precious 2 hours of unsupervised autonomy.
And in that window, she takes this monumental step for a child her age. She walks by herself to the public library in the village.
10-minute journey.
That 10-minute walk, carrying the weight of her entire intellectual future, it symbolizes her deliberate choice to pursue knowledge over just, passive acceptance of her circumstances.
And when she arrives, she encounters Mrs. Phelps, the librarian.
A key character.
Mrs. Phelps is rightly stunned by the arrival of a tiny, unaccompanied 4-year-old. But this interaction is so subtle and crucial. Mrs. Phelps doesn't dismiss her.
No, she provides this gentle, professional validation. She kindly directs Matilda to the children's books on the lower shelves and offers to help her find one with pictures.
But Matilda's reply immediately signals she's operating on a different plane. She politely declines, certain she can manage.
That short exchange is key, isn't it? It establishes Mrs. Phelps as the first adult who recognizes and respects Matilda's capability, moving beyond the expectations set by her age.
Absolutely. So for the next few afternoons, Matilda establishes this beautiful, quiet ritual.
2 glorious hours sitting quietly, just devouring books.
And the text notes that she finished every single children's book in the entire place
Yeah.
in a matter of weeks.
Every single one. We're talking about dozens, maybe hundreds of books consumed by a 4-year-old.
It's an almost mythical pace of intellectual absorption.
And that necessity quickly leads to the next pivotal interaction with Mrs. Phelps.
Right. When asked what she wants next, Matilda quietly states, "I've finished all the children's books,"
And Mrs. Phelps, of course, she suspects she only looked at the pictures.
which is a reasonable assumption.
Mm-hmm.
But Matilda calmly confirms, "Yes, but I've read the books as well."
This is the age reveal that just floors the librarian.
It does. When asked, Matilda states she's 4 years and 3 months old.
And instead of retreating into disbelief or patronizing her, Mrs. Phelps shows genuine pedagogical insight.
She does. She asks what kind of book Matilda wants now, and Matilda requests a really good one that grown-ups read, a famous one.
And here's where the literary deep dive really begins. Mrs. Phelps, after a moment of consideration, admitting to herself, I must be mad for even considering it.
She recommends Great Expectations by Charles Dickens.
So why this specific book? What's the significance?
Well, the choice is thematically perfect. Great Expectations is this monumental, complex novel centered on a young protagonist, Pip, who attempts to rise above his humble beginnings.
Right. Navigating confusing social strata and dealing with false or misplaced aspirations.
Embodied by Miss Havisham, exactly. So Matilda, who is trapped in this low-brow, deceitful environment, is also seeking self-improvement and dealing with the falsity of her parents' social claims.
So Dickens serves as the perfect foundational text, mirroring her own journey of striving for greatness despite her origins.
Precisely. And the source material paints such a visceral picture of her total absorption.
It does. Mrs. Phelps watches in fascination as Matilda sits in a large armchair, the heavy Dickens volume resting on her lap. It was too heavy for her to hold up.
Absorbed in the adventures of Pip and Miss Havisham and her cobwebbed house, woven by Dickens, the great storyteller. The only movement from the reader, it says, was the lifting of the hand every now and then to turn over a page.
That quiet absorption then led to the borrowing revelation.
Right. Mrs. Phelps eventually informed Matilda about the public library system, the fact that she could borrow books for 2 weeks and take them home.
This wasn't just about convenience, was it? It was about institutional validation, independence.
Oh, completely. Matilda was thrilled.
From then on, she'd visit the library only once a week. Her small, isolated bedroom became her reading room.
Often accompanied by a comforting mug of hot chocolate. The books became her true family and her guides.
And the literature she consumes immediately expands her world far beyond the confines of her English village.
The list of authors is incredibly telling of her adventurous spirit and intellectual scope. She traveled the world. She went on olden days sailing ships with Joseph Conrad.
Experienced Africa with Ernest Hemingway.
And explored India with Rudyard Kipling.
This is so critical. By the time we move to the next section, Matilda isn't just a clever girl. She is a global citizen of literature. She's armed with the critical distance and analytical tools necessary to wage war against her negligent parents.
Her intellect has been fortified by the world's great storytellers.
Okay, so we transition now from Matilda's private education to her first open skirmish.
And the frustration she feels living under the Wormwood regime, it inevitably boils over.
She longs for her parents to possess just basic decency, to be good and loving and understanding and honorable and intelligent.
But they are none of those things.
And because she's trapped, her genius has to transform from a tool of self-improvement into a weapon of tactical self-defense against their boorish behavior.
Yes. This section details the critical event where her raw cognitive power, her capacity for immediate, complex calculation, is unleashed for the first time in front of her family.
And crucially, the text defines the inherent power imbalance. Matilda is very small and very young, leaving her physically and legally subordinate.
Right. The only power she had over anyone in her family was brain power. She knew she could run rings around them all for sheer cleverness.
Yet this mental superiority was constantly chafing against her absolute subordination. She had to obey their asinine orders.
Including eating TD dinner trays in front of the dreaded box.
The inciting incident arrives when Mr. Wormwood returns home one evening, and he's visually signaling his vulgarity before he even speaks.
The suit.
The suit. He strides in wearing a loud check suit and a yellow tie. The suit is specifically detailed as an appalling, broad orange and green check that the text says almost blinded the onlooker.
This is classic Dahl. The suit is the physical manifestation of his moral ugliness and his loudness. He's a man who cannot abide subtlety in his clothing or his business practices.
And he immediately starts boasting to his son, Michael, whom he expects to join the fraudulent empire one day.
Right. About his successful day selling 5 cars for a tidy profit.
And this boast includes the details of his extremely corrupt methods, which he proudly shares with Michael. He talks about putting sawdust in the gearboxes to quiet rattles.
Using the electric drill on the speedometer cables to roll back the mileage.
A splash of paint here and there, and a few other clever little tricks.
Let's analyze the symbolism of that fraud for a moment. His tricks aren't just lazy. They are designed to disguise 2 specific things. Poor quality, the sawdust fixing the rattles, but only temporarily. And historical deception, the drilled speedometer lying about the car's past.
And that mirrors his parenting perfectly. He's trying to market something cheap and broken, like his character or his business, as valuable through deliberate lies and cover-ups.
Exactly. He then challenges Michael to calculate the total profit on the 5 cars.
Claiming he did the calculation himself in under 10 minutes because he has practically got a computer inside my head.
The irony, of course, is that Matilda is the actual computer in the room.
Michael obediently gets a pad and pencil, ready to start the long, complex task.
And we need to detail the financial breakdown precisely because these non-rounded complex numbers are Dahl's way of verifying Matilda's extraordinary claim. It makes the father's denial all the more ludicrous.
Absolutely. The math challenge is significant. So car 1, bought for 278 pounds, sold for 1,425 pounds.
Okay, that's a profit of 11,147 pounds.
Car 2 cost 118 pounds, sold for 760 pounds.
Profit there is 642 pounds.
Car 3 cost 111 pounds, sold for 999 pounds 50.
That's 888 pounds 50.
Car 4, which was a real wreck, cost only $86, but sold for 699 pounds 50.
A profit of 613 pounds and 50 on that one.
And finally, car 5 cost $637, sold for 1,649 pounds and 50.
Which is a profit of 1,012 pounds 50.
Right. So that is 5 separate non-intuitive subtraction problems, followed by a massive addition problem.
A lot of work for pen and paper.
So while Michael is still crouching over his pad, scribbling slowly, trying to process these long, complicated figures, Matilda, sitting quietly on the sofa, she interjects with the answer.
Quietly and precisely.
And this is the moment of explosion. Without pausing, she gives the exact total profit.
Dad, you made exactly 4,303 pounds and 50 pence altogether. It's not a guess. It's an instantaneous calculation.
And the reaction from Mr. Wormwood is immediate, violent, and highly revealing of his deep insecurity.
He stiffens, turns dark red.
And his first instinct is denial and profound accusation. He shouts, "Shut up," and "Stop guessing and trying to be clever."
And when Matilda gently confirms the number and asks if it matches his paper, the reality that she is smarter than him is just too much for him to bear. He explodes.
He unleashes this torrent of abuse, pointing at her and shouting, You little cheat, you looked at my bit of paper, you read it off from what I've got written here."
And Matilda calmly explains she's on the other side of the room and couldn't possibly see it, which is where the willful ignorance becomes active misogyny.
He doubles down on his ignorance and his gender bias, shouting, "No one in the world could give the right answer just like that, especially a girl. You're a little cheat, madam, that's what you are, a cheat and a liar."
This confrontation is the crucial point of the arithmetic section. It teaches Matilda a really painful lesson.
Which is?
That raw logic and irrefutable instantaneous truth are insufficient weapons against deliberate ignorance and pride. Her brain power, though supreme, is unbelievable to her father.
Which confirms that she must resort to nonverbal, tactical forms of retaliation to achieve justice. Now pause for a moment, listener. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Matilda's story, taking the time to unpack the nuance behind Roald Dahl's incredible literary choices, please take a second and hit that subscribe button.
It genuinely helps us keep delivering these detailed analyses straight to you.
It really does. Because, as you were saying, the failure of logic leads directly to the next successful act.
Revenge.
So, Matilda cannot allow the latest display of foulness, the abuse, and the unfounded accusation of cheating to stand unpunished.
The confrontation, though mathematically successful for her, was psychologically damaging.
And as she sat eating awful fried fish and fried chips and ignoring the television, her brain, now acting as a strategic weapon, went to work on various possibilities.
By the time she went up to bed, her mind was settled on a spectacular, almost chemically precise revenge.
What makes this retaliation so brilliant is that it targets the single physical manifestation of Mr. Wormwood's vanity.
His hair.
His hair.
Huh.
He has this fine crop of black hair parted neatly in the middle, which he treats with almost religious devotion.
Rubbing in large quantities of a lotion called Oil of Violets Hair Tonic daily.
It's described as a smelly purple mixture, and the application is a performance of loud masculine grunts and heavy breathing.
It's a caricature of toxic masculinity focused entirely on external appearance.
And the other critical material in this plan belongs to Mrs. Wormwood. She has brilliant platinum blonde hair,
Which she maintains with platinum blonde hair dye, extra strong. And the packaging carries a key warning. Caution, this is peroxide. Keep away from children.
That detail isn't incidental, is it? It connects directly back to the chemical knowledge Matilda must have gleaned from her vast, unsupervised reading and exploration of the world around her.
It shows she's not just reading stories, she's absorbing practical information.
So the swap, the execution of the revenge, is meticulous and displays astonishing forethought.
The next morning, Matilda rises early, goes into the bathroom, and locks the door.
Her first step is maximizing the effect. She unscrews the cap of her father's oil of violets and tips 3/4 of the contents down the drain.
Which is crucial for maximizing the concentration of the replacement liquid.
She then refills the bottle almost entirely with her mother's highly corrosive platinum blonde hair dye, extra strong.
But here is the masterful touch of camouflage.
She carefully leaves enough of the original purple hair tonic in the bottle so that when she gave it a good shake, the whole thing still looked reasonably purple.
She replaces the doctored bottle on the shelf and puts her mother's dye bottle back in the cupboard. The trap is perfectly camouflaged and entirely chemical.
The morning revelation is just pure Dahlian chaos and dark comedy.
Mr. Wormwood, completely oblivious, comes noisily into the dining room, bragging about going out to flog a few little beauties to the idiots at the garage.
And he demands his breakfast, a truly vulgar quantity of food.
2 fried eggs on fried bread, 3 pork sausages, 3 strips of bacon, and some fried tomatoes. His breakfast is as loud and crass as his suit.
Matilda's just sitting there quietly, admiring the delicious suspense. She doesn't dare look up, terrified that her face might give away her perfect scheme.
And the climax occurs when Mrs. Wormwood sweeps out from the kitchen, carrying the huge plate piled high with that huge breakfast.
She catches sight of her husband, stops dead, and unleashes a blood-curdling scream that seemed to lift her right up into the air.
She drops the huge plate. The food smashes onto the carpet.
And Mr. Wormwood, of course, is more concerned with the material mess. He's shouting, "What the heck's the matter with you, woman? Look at the mess you've made on the carpet."
But the focus, inevitably, snaps back to the spectacular transformation.
Mr. Wormwood's fine, proud crop of black hair is now a dirty silver.
The text calls it the color of a tightrope walker's tights that had not been washed for the entire circus season.
A perfect description. And his face immediately turns pale green, the color of sour apples. The dye worked perfectly.
Mrs. Wormwood starts shrieking in revulsion. She's declaring he looks absolutely frightful and horrendous and like a freak.
Or someone's grandmother gone wrong.
He's yelling in confusion, insisting he did nothing but use his hair tonic. The son confirms the transformation, noting it's the same color as Mum's, only much dirtier looking.
And here comes Matilda's quiet, surgical explanation, feigning complete innocence.
She offers that he must have mistakenly grabbed Mummy's bottle of hair stuff off the shelf instead of his own, which forces Mrs. Wormwood to reveal the true, dangerous nature of the dye.
She confirms the danger, shrieking, "Mine's terribly strong. I'm only meant to use 1 tablespoon of it in a whole basin of water, and you've gone and put it all over your head neat."
And she confirms that the dye is a powerful chemical peroxide, and that using it neat might cause all his hair to fall out.
She even reveals the horrifying detail that They use the exact same chemical under a different name to disinfect the lavatory pan.
The proud, self-proclaimed computer in my head, genius businessman, instantly dissolves into a terrified, panicked wreck.
He wails, "What shall I do?"
And Matilda, ever the helpful, innocent child, suggests he wash it immediately, though the mother informs him the color is permanent.
The consequence is immediate and perfectly tailored poetic justice. Mr. Wormwood is forced to spring into action, shouting at his wife to get him an emergency appointment with her hairdresser.
This instant for a hair dyeing job. Tell them it's an emergency. They've got to boot someone else off their list.
He dashes out of the room, leaving a scene of domestic chaos and a shattered breakfast on the carpet. The genius of Matilda's tactical revenge is complete.
Achieved through applied chemistry and silent observation. This moment signals a real shift in the power dynamic.
How so?
Matilda has discovered that while logic fails, psychological warfare, executed with intellectual precision, achieves immediate and satisfying justice.
The battle against vulgar ignorance has begun in earnest.
Absolutely.
What a phenomenal beginning to this classic tale. We see so clearly how the genius of reading, intellectual curiosity, and instantaneous calculation provided Matilda with the tools not just for knowledge and self-improvement,
but for sophisticated tactical self-defense against overwhelming neglect and cruelty.
Her journey shows the true, explosive power of an active mind that simply refuses to be constrained.
And the source material masterfully ends with that wonderful sense of chaos and perfectly administered poetic justice delivered entirely by a 4-year-old in a quiet act of rebellion.
Matilda's small acts of resistance, the library trips, the instantaneous math calculation, the chemical swap, they set the stage for her future.
They do. The battle lines are firmly drawn between genuine, empathetic intelligence and deliberate, vulgar ignorance represented by her parents.
We want to thank you for tuning in to DFC Books for this deep dive into Matilda's amazing start, tracing her incredible mind from her early vocabulary right through to her first spectacular chemical prank.
And as we leave you with the enduring wisdom of Roald Dahl, remember to keep your focus sharp and your eyes open. Above all, watch with glittering eyes the whole world around you, because the greatest secrets are always hidden in the most unlikely places.
Which leads to a final thought for you, the listener. The question is this: if logic and truth fail to convince the willfully ignorant, is tactical trickery the only necessary path toward justice?
Something to mull over until our next deep dive.